Hello Project Zomboid enjoyers, welcome to another episode of the Masterclass, and today we are deep diving into another topic picked by my community. And somehow I am having a feeling that this particular episode will probably rub some people the wrong way, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I'm really hoping for some heated discussion in the comment section under this video, so guys, please show up for this one. So let's wait for that "this is how you died" phrase to disappear, hit that start button, and deep dive into my first 14 days playbook. Now I want to start today's episode with a disclaimer. You see, Project Zomboid is a sandbox game. There is no single correct way of playing it. In fact, there are tens if not hundreds of different ways to start the game, to progress through the game, to enjoy the game. So what you're gonna see in today's episode is just one of the ways, a structured approach for early survival and long-term planning. Something that I truly hope many new players in our Project Zomboid community might find useful. But I want to emphasize that there is no single correct way of progressing in Zomboid, and it's all about your own personal experiences, learning from your mistakes, and the creativity that you apply to your playthroughs. So the game starts. You wake up somewhere in Knox County, it's early July, that is if you're playing on the default setting, and what to do next? What is your plan? You have to survive even though the game tells you that you're actually going to die. But none of us want to die, right? We want to survive, so let's figure out how to do it the best way we can. What I like to do is to split the first 2 weeks of our character's life into 3 separate stages, each one representing a slightly different focal area that will allow our character to build up and prepare for anything that's coming. Now, stage 1 I define as survive and setup. This usually takes anything between 1 to 3 days. And in this initial stage, what I like to do is to secure my perimeter. I don't want to have zombies roaming around my safe house, interrupting my sleeping schedule, or jumping on me when I execute basic tasks. I also like to understand my exact location. How far away from the city center am I? Where are some points of interest, like specific stores or buildings? Where is the gas station? Now, when you play long enough, you will learn to know the topography of most of the major cities in Project Zomboid. But if you do not know them, and you don't want to blindly explore every single location, you can use the Build 42 online map, which I will link in the description of this video, as an extra resource for your exploration. Looting through your nearby houses to find the early game essential items. Now, everyone has their own list of essential things they want to find, but this is my list. I like to find a reliable weapon. I don't want to fight zombies off using a plunger. Some sort of a bag to carry loot. A backpack is best, but even a makeshift sling bag will do. A watch to be able to tell the time. It's actually more important than you think. A screwdriver and a paperclip, but this is specifically because I do have a mod that allows me to lockpick doors. But in order to lockpick doors, you need a screwdriver and a paperclip. Some basic meds, 2-3 rags or bandages, a disinfectant, and some painkillers. A rubber hose and some sort of a liquid container like a bottle or a gas can. This will be important later. A can opener or a handy knife, and some sort of a light source. Now, you should be able to find like 80% of these things fairly early in the game just by looting garages, basements. They are a great source of these type of things. And yeah, I did spawn in a house that had a sledgehammer, so lucky me, I guess. This entire house is actually pretty insane when it comes to loot. Likely one of the better ones I've ever spawned into. And the last thing that I would suggest doing early is just taking advantage of Life and Living TV schedule. And now, I'm not saying that you need to plan your entire life around it, but if you are near a house that has a TV and you're approaching the time slot, it's worth watching the shows. And what is it specifically? Well, it's a channel that airs specific types of shows that give you early game XP for several skills. And which skills and at which time slots? Well, this is the Life and Living TV schedule in a nutshell. The shows air at 3 different time slots, at 6 AM, at noon, and at 6 PM. And depending on the day, you're gonna get a different show that's gonna boost a different skill. Not gonna go through the entire schedule, you can just pause the video and check it yourself. Okay, so let's move on to stage 2, which I like to call expand and loot. This one usually starts for me around day 3 or 4 and progresses all the way till day 10 or 11. And frankly speaking, I never proceed to this stage without first finding a functional vehicle, because not having a vehicle makes your loot runs far more ineffective and time consuming. But luckily, if you are at day 2 or 3 or maybe even day 4, it all depends on how your playthrough goes. By this stage, you should be able to find some sort of a car. It doesn't need to be in perfect condition, it just needs to be drivable and reliable, like this van in this example. And this is absolutely sufficient for a loot run. You just gotta be careful while doing that, because you would likely loot areas which were yet to be cleared of zombies, so always pace yourself. This game is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And which are the things that we would be looking for in these loot runs? Well, here's a couple of ideas. A generator, and the generator magazine, which will allow you to operate it. If you don't find the generator mag, you need to grind electrical to level 3, and if you don't know how to do it, you need to check out this video where I explain some quick methods to reach that level, and also the comment section is full of great tips. At this stage, you probably already killed quite a few zombies, so finding extra weapons, preferably with higher quality, will probably make sense, as the one you are using is probably already worn out. Check out hardware stores, warehouses, or maybe you stumble upon a survivor's house. All these are great locations for good weapons. What I also like to source at this stage are carpentry tools and resources, as well as some farming equipment. These become important for me in stage 3, so finding a saw, a few boxes of nails, some tarp, as well as some farming equipment will make sense. And lastly, finding books and magazines, especially for priority skills. Now, I cannot stress enough how beneficial it is, so spending some time dedicating a day or two to do a book and magazine run makes absolute sense. And here are some few ideas for you guys, places which you can go to and loot and have a high probability of finding either books or magazines. The most obvious choice would be a bookstore. Not every city has a bookstore, but those that have, make sure to visit. Also schools. Schools have their own libraries which are full of books, but schools also mean lots of fighting, so make sure you're ready for the challenge. And finally, a very underrated but really decent location to loot for magazines is a post office. Especially the storage area for post offices. These are full of great things, full of magazines, definitely worth checking out. And finally, the last thing that I like to do in stage 2 is to identify my permanent base location. Everyone has their own taste when it comes to picking your permanent base location, but it's highly likely that your starting house will not be it. And finally, before going to stage 3, I think it's important to mention that during stage 2, you are likely to experience the helicopter event. Now, this meta event is often the demise of many players because it would attract large groups of zombies due to the noise that the helicopter makes. Once you hear the helicopter, it's wise to stay indoors and wait the entire event out. There are also other ways to deal with the helicopter event. You can actually use it to your own advantage, luring zombies away from a specific location, but I'm not going to be discussing that. There are different strategies. If you're new to the game, you should focus on surviving it first. Stage 3, which I call the settle phase. Now, this would normally happen sometime between day 10 and day 14, and this means both the electricity and water are likely to shut down soon. That is, if you've kept the default settings. And that's exactly why it's nice to have both rain collectors built and also a generator connected to your base. This is the moment where I would also start stockpiling on non-perishable food, because I will need some time to develop my own food production, as well as secure extra supply of meds and batteries. You see, when power goes out and we are on those extended loot runs, things might get dark. and that's when we use flashlights. So we want to have a supply of batteries in order not to find ourselves in the middle of a zombie-infested town with no light and just pitch black darkness. Now this is also the moment in which I would start making my own food, and I would begin with sowing in-season plants. In build 42, we've got a massive overhaul to the entire farming experience, and I did make a long and detailed video on how agriculture works, so make sure to check it out. I think it covers everything related to farming. And finally, we will not survive long-term just on potatoes, so we need to find some decent sources of protein, and that is why at this stage I would start thinking about keeping my own animals, but also find locations for fishing, as fish are a great source of nutrients in Project Zomboid. And if you really hate yourself, you might even go for hunting and try to find locations where either deer or rabbits occasionally appear. Guys, I know I just touched the outer layer of the surface of Project Zomboid, and I do understand that there are thousands of different ways that you can play the game. I do feel, however, that structuring all this information will be beneficial for especially new players who are just starting to understand how Project Zomboid works, and putting all of these information together might be something helpful. I would love to hear from you guys. How do you start your playthroughs? What other tips or ideas you might have for solid starts? As always, please share them in the comment section under this video. If you want to stay up to date with what's coming up on the channel or even influence the upcoming topics, my Discord is the place to be. The link is in the description of the video. Thank you for all the support you guys are showing me by watching my videos, liking, commenting, fact-checking me. I really appreciate all the interactions. It makes all of this much more fun. That's it for today. I'm Gertrix. Cheers, guys.